Hello and welcome to the channel. Zach D Productions here, and I'm here for a ranking video for you guys. So for this ranking, we'll be ranking the studio discography from grunge rock legends, Soundgarden. Of course, rest in peace to Chris Cornell. He was definitely a great singer and maybe even one of the best frontman in rock just in general, and definitely of this genre, the genre of grunge. So with this ranking here, it's just going to be based on my opinion, of course, like how it always is. And like how we always do things here, we're going to go from worst to best based on my opinion. Now, I am actually of the opinion that Soundgarden has actually never released a bad album. Now, of course, the whole point of this ranking is to see which albums are better than others. And yeah, they've definitely had albums stronger than others. I definitely really do dig their classic era, especially before they went on that long break, before they released their final album in the early 2010s. But yeah, not one of these albums I could say are bad, even though some of them are clearly better than others. So let's go ahead and get started with what I have last, and what I have last is their last studio album, King Animal, which I think a lot of people would have last in their rankings when it comes to the Soundgarden discography. This album here, I like it, but I don't love it though. It's just not as recognizable. It's not one of their classics, you know? And the album does lack a little bit of replay value in my opinion, but I will say that I do think that the song Worst Dreams is a really good song. I do return to that song often, actually. I think that's a pretty good song, but yeah, King Animal, it's good, but I wouldn't say it's great. So next we have their debut album, Ultra Mega OK. Pretty solid album, but again, it's just not one of their best. Doesn't have the same replay value like the ones that we'll get into next for this ranking, but you know what? Still a pretty strong album. You know, it's pretty raw. It's got the bands just starting out. You, of course, have the classic song Flower on here, which is great. But yeah, a little bit better than King Animal in my opinion, but still not one of their best, but still not bad. I still think it's a pretty good album. So next we have Down on the Upside, and yeah, pretty good album, especially with the singles to this album. I think the singles especially are really good to this album. But of course, some highlights on this album I would say are Pretty News, Rhinosaur, Zero Chance, and of course Burning in My Hand. That's another solid track. But yeah, this was of course the last Soundgarden album for a while before they came back with King Animal. But yeah, I mean, of course you can tell that Soundgarden, they were becoming something not as great as they once were, but still not bad by any means. And I guess you could say it kind of started with this album, because the one that came after this, of course, in my opinion, is their weakest. But you know, for what this album is, I think it's pretty solid. So next we have Louder Than Love, which is their second album, and it's definitely one of their best. And I think a lot of people can agree with me on that. A lot of people can agree that this is definitely one of Soundgarden's best albums. Of course, because you do have some of their best tracks on here, especially the song Loud Love, which is maybe one of my favorite Soundgarden songs. But of course, the other songs on the album you can't go wrong with as well, like Ugly Truth and Hands All Over and Power Trip. Those are some highlights as well. But yeah, very strong album, definitely a classic in grunge. Now, my top two are actually a tie, because I do have my days where I do prefer one over the other. So for this ranking, I'm just going to go with a tie, because between these two albums, it's honestly really hard for me to decide which I like more, because they're both classics and they're both very strong albums for sure. And those albums are Bad Motorfinger and Super Unknown. Yep, that's right. These albums are tied for my number one favorite Soundgarden album. I know a lot of people would go with Bad Motorfinger, but hey, that's fair. I mean, this album is very solid. Really, you can't go wrong with any of the songs on this album. Of course, you have Rusty Cage, Slaves and Bulldozers, and Room a Thousand Years Wide. Yeah, a lot of really strong tracks from this album. Definitely a classic in grunge. And of course with Super Unknown, I know a lot of people would also say that this is their favorite. Definitely one of the most accessible sounding albums of their career. Like with Bad Motorfinger, you can't go wrong with anything on this album either. You know, of course you have songs on here like Let Me Drown, Mailman, Black Hole Sun, which is of course a classic, and The Day I Tried to Live, of course, is another classic of theirs. But yeah, definitely a great album. So Bad Motorfinger and Super Unknown are my top 2. So let me know what you guys think. How would you rank the Soundgarden albums? Feel free to let me know. What did you think of this ranking? Feel free to let me know. So with that being said, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day and take care.